We are still discussing leadership, and we are drawing our lessons from Bible characters. Today, we want to use a little talked about guy called John Mark. Who is John Mark? He is the writer of the gospel we call St. Mark. So he is a big name in Christendom. But we don't meet him as a big name. We meet him as a small boy, growing in a Christian family. We read in Acts chapter 12, verse 12. So, when he had considered this, he came to the house of Mary. This is the story of Peter coming out of prison. The mother of John. He came to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose surname was Mark, where many were gathered together praying. So you can see, I don't know about his father, but the mother was called Mary, and she was Mama Kanisa, a woman who hosts the church. That's why when they are praying for Peter who is in prison, they are busy, they are in her house. So this boy must have been used, as a young boy, must have been used to visitors coming. He knew who is who in the Christian world. They knew about the small boy called Mark. That's how he grew. Looking forgotten, nobody's caring about him. He's just a person in the crowd. What they didn't know is that in the process, the young man was learning. And I want to say that that's one of the things that we learn in the story of John Mark. That some people do not start late in life. Some people start early in life. And it's important, even as a leader, if you are trying to see who to involve, start involving people that are young. As long as you have been able to verify his commitment to Christ, able to verify his willingness to learn, start using them very early in life. That's why a good church is a church that invests heavily in Sunday school and youth meetings. Because in the process, you are promoting someone who later in life will be writing the story of the gospel, the story of the church, because he is young enough to wait until it has accomplished things and write about it. But many of us look down on the youth. Timothy was told, don't let people look down on your youth. John Mark was such a person. Young boy, the mother is well known, the mother is hosting meetings, but he's just out there. Some people even believe that he's the young boy who ran away naked when during the time that Jesus was being crucified. And somebody said, hey, young boy, he ran away and left his cloak naked. He was a daring young boy, willing to take risks at a very young age. Let me ask you as a leader, who among the young people, among the teenagers in your church, who are you giving opportunities? Who are you helping to grow? Who are you helping to learn? Do you go on your own when you are going for ministry? Or do you always go with qualified people? Because these young people waste your time. People did not feel they wasted their time with John Mark. And he proved later to have been worth investing in. And I think whenever you remember John Mark, remember the small boy in Mary's house. Remember the small boy who is in the house when Peter is released by the angels from prison. Let's believe that by using this story, God allowing this story to go into the scriptures, it was a way of helping all of us who are in leadership to be challenged. Who are our John Marks? Who are we helping? Are we willing to take the risk with them? What are we doing that will help them to become who they are today? I think that's a very important thing. I heard the story of a guy who went to preach. When he came back, he was asked, how was the mission? He said, oh, it went well. 2.5 people got saved. They said, yeah, you are confusing us. 2.5 people, what does that mean? He asked them, what do you think? It must mean that 2 adults and 1 young boy got saved. He says, you got it wrong. When an adult gets saved, He's only half his life available to the Lord. When a young boy gets saved, the whole of his life will be used in the ministry. So you get a much higher return when you invest in the John Mark type than when you invest in old people. And I'm not suggesting we should not minister to old people. I'm only saying we can minister to them. But I think it will be important that we learn the benefit. You know, Paul and Barnabas brought John Mark with them when they returned to Antioch of Syria after delivering the relief for the brethren suffering in Jerusalem during the great famine. So they knew Barnabas must have known Mary's house. So when they finished the missionary journey and take help to Jerusalem, they see the boy again. He's now growing bigger. And they decide to go back with him. Acts chapter 12, verse 25 reads, "And Barnabas and Saul returned from Jerusalem when they had fulfilled their ministry, and they also took with them John, whose surname was Mark." You know, as a young person, if you're a young leader, please keep company with other people. There are a lot of benefits out of it. Because of this boy, John Mark, being active in his mother's ministry, he is noticed. And so when they go back and they know they are going to go for another missionary journey, yes, this is the kind of boy who can withstand the physical challenges of the journey. Let's take him. He'll be useful in the gospel missions. You know, having a network with the leaders older than you will also be of use. So maybe you are older, you're not like John Mark, but do you have a network of mentors, people better than you who can make their network available to you and help you to grow? Or do you resist because you don't want to be intimidated? You don't want to go where you feel, I'm too small, these are good people, these are great people. A lot of people are unable to realize their full potential because they are not willing to expose themselves to greatness, because they want, wherever they are, to be the cock that crows, to be the big name. So they kind of try to keep off intimidating bigger leaders. So in the process, they become mediocre themselves because their full potential cannot be realized. Because wherever you are the best. Wherever you are, everybody is talking about how great you are. Are you not understanding in the process, you will never grow? But if you start relating with the people far much better than you in whatever you are doing, it will make you feel, I need to learn. And the teachers will be available because you are relating with them. You will get challenged so that you don't rest at very low achievement levels when you do that. And I think the story of John Mark is a story of a guy willing to fellowship and work with greatness. And I think no wonder he was able to write the first gospel ever recorded, because Mark is the first gospel in the Synoptic Gospels. And he is the one who wrote it, because he spent his time with the greatness, with Peter, with Paul, he is learning until the story of Jesus was at his fingertips. And then God used him to write it. And the others, it sounds like, used John Mark's gospel in order to be able to put meat on it. But he's the one who wrote the first one. So that now you do not have to tell the story just by saying I was told. You could give your new converts something to read so they know the gospel in totality. But all came from ability to relate with greatness. And my friend, as a leader, I ask you, are you the only cock in your crowd? Or do you move out of your way to befriend great people who may intimidate you, yes, but in the process you learn things that are going to help you to be a better achiever and to realize your full potential. The greatness will push you to your very limit. So you will be what God wants you to be in totality because of spending time, just like happened with John Mark. You know, John Mark had deserted at one time, as he went with them, he deserted Paul and Barnabas at Perga or Pamphylia. Now, we read in Acts 13, verse 13. Now, when Paul and his party set sail from Paphos, they came to Perga in Pamphylia, and John, departing from them, returned to Jerusalem. He was not saying farewell. He departed from them. Look at Acts 15:38. So Paul insisted that they should not take with them the one who had departed from them in Pamphylia and had not gone with them to the work. Wow. Didn't I say when you take risks with the young, inexperienced people, you also take risks with the possibility of failure. But you know, risk doesn't have to happen. Sometimes it happens. And this boy actually fails. The mentee's weakness finally came out. Let me tell you one of the dangers of taking risk, and what happened is that because of his failure and running away, there was a disagreement between Paul and Barnabas, so serious that they ended up going different ways. You know, your weakness as a leader could cause chaos among the people who mentor you. And that's why you need to be very careful. Assess something well enough. If you think you can't make it and you are sure, please don't go. The best time to assess something is before you begin it. Now they begin a journey and this guy doesn't complete it, bringing a lot of confusion in the team. So all I'm saying is that the story of John Mark is a story that tells us for us to be aware whenever, and I'm emphasizing how good it should be to mentor young people, be ready for the risks and manage the risks when they finally come, because they could happen. That's really the thing that we need to learn. So I'm asking you, when you have taken risks with young people and then the risk you feared happened, do you start saying, no, I'm not the one who did, or do you take responsibility? I didn't know it would happen, it has happened, I'm sorry. You say sorry to the total group. Admit you are the one who took the risk. Number two, do you try to see how you can help the person who has failed in order to have a second chance? Or do you just blame them? After all, they have embarrassed you. They have made you, your name, they have hurt your reputation. So others are beating him, you beat him harder. No. If you really are a mentor, you will tell him what he has done is wrong. You will come out on him like a ton of bricks, but then you also comfort him and tell him we believe in a God of second chances. And I think that will be important. But John Mark had a very good mentor in Barnabas. But why was Barnabas determined to take John Mark even when he failed? Unfortunately, the scriptures do not tell us exactly why Barnabas was so committed to these mentees. But we can guess, or some people have guessed. Looking at Colossians chapter 4, verse 10, there is a relationship between them. I think Mark is likely to be the cousin of Barnabas. So, in addition to seeing this young man who has potential, he also may be thinking of Mary and what he has to tell Mary. And you know, your own mother is always likely to help you and understand your failures. We as leaders must become like parents to our mentees. So when they fail, like Barnabas, we will still want to give them a second chance. But you see, the name Barnabas means son of encouragement. Acts chapter 4, verse 36. So we know right from the beginning that Barnabas' personality is a people person, always inclined to encourage and include others rather than give up on them. That's a gift God has given Barnabas. So even if the boy was not a relative, he signs with the weak. He always sees what others cannot see in weak people. And that's why he was able to implement his program and helped the young man. Isn't he the same Barnabas who in Acts chapter 9, when everybody in Jerusalem is worried about this risky guy who has been killing people, this guy called Saul, the persecutor, isn't he the same one who signs with this persecutor and is able to get this Saul from Syria back to Jerusalem, a Christian, and accept him, and according to Acts chapter 9 verse 27, introduce him to the disciples and apostles. You know, the interesting thing is Peter didn't seem to have such a heart for John Mark. And he was getting surprised that Barnabas is siding with a weakling, forgetting that he himself was a weakling whom Barnabas sided with. Was he expecting Barnabas all of a sudden to change from his personality, from his character, from the gifting God has given him? These really the qualifications that a good mentor, leader should have. Do you want to help your people to grow in their potential? Number one, treat them like your own children. And if they're only your children, you always think of how you can give them a second chance. Number two, be a person who is an encourager. Always see some little flame which you can blow into full flame. Become somebody who is always looking in this bad situation, what is good about it? I think that will be something that that will be very important for somebody who is a mentor, an encourager, who is looking for something to fan the flame. Thirdly, be a people person. Enjoy helping people. It should give you joy that you pick that boy who could not even look after himself. Look at, now he's a managing director. It should excite you. You get nothing out of it. No money, nothing. He doesn't even thank you, doesn't even appreciate you, but you get happy out of helping people to become great. That's what the spirit of a mentor. And then lastly, you become somebody who is a risk taker, taking risks with the people. You are not afraid like others. When you can see potential, even if it's a risky thing, you take the risk and help the people. Then you will be like Barnabas. And like Barnabas, you are going to get people going some distance. Acts 15, 39 to 41 says, then the contention became so sharp that they parted from one another. And so Barnabas took Mark and sailed to Cyprus. But Paul chose Silas and departed, being commanded by the brethren to the grace of God. And he went through Syria and Cilicia, strengthening the churches. You know, it's a pity that the failure of our friend John Mark ended up splitting the team. But you know something? When you say all things work for good, it worked for good. You know, instead of one team, they become two teams. Instead of going to one city, they go to two cities. Instead of covering one line of people, they cover two. By the time they are coming back to Antioch, they have done much more work than they were done. Because now what happens is, Paul is forced to take Silas. Silas therefore becomes a missionary. And then Barnabas and Mark become the other team. You should always see a silver lining in every cloud. And I think that's what we learn from the story of John Mark. John Mark, it's true he gave up on the way. It is true he is a weakling. But Barnabas can see is that he is young. He is not exactly where he should be, but he has a place he can be. So he said, we're not giving up. Okay, you go that way, we'll go this way. Let's serve the Lord. After all, the regions that need to be covered are many. As a leader, Are you that type of a leader who will look for, when you're disagreeing, look for what can be beneficial to the kingdom, what can be beneficial to the project, rather than wanting to kill and must be the one who wins? Paul allowed Barnabas to go one direction, he went another direction in peace. It was agreed. And I think that's what you need to ask yourself as a leader. Would you rather help people continue with the journey rather than condemn them and stop them? Even equip them to continue the journey rather than stop them because they are not supporting you or because they are not doing things. As long as it will advance the project, the mission, the vision, help even people who don't like you. Help people whom you don't even like to do the thing. Paul elsewhere says that some preach the gospel out of envy. But I would say let the gospel be preached for good, for bad motivations, as long as people come to know the Lord. And I think that's what's happening here. So whenever we remember John Mark, we remember the negative thing about him failing to hold on to the end of the journey. We also remember that through him, God was able to get 2 teams to become missionaries. You see, there are 2 types of managers, 2 types of leaders. They are what we call the task manager and the people person. I think Paul, without doubt, is a task manager, goal-oriented people. They think about the goal, and so they do not stand when some people are not going to help the goal very much, they leave them alone. But you have people-oriented leaders, and this is now Barnabas, who want to accomplish the task, but not at the expense of people. You know, God has both people, and both people should work together. You know, 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 4 to 6 says, there are diversities of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are differences of ministries, but the same Lord. And there are diversities of activities, but it is the same God who works all in all. So Barnabas knew the giftings of Paul are different from his. But he is saying, you go with your gift, I go with my gift. In other words, do not feel like everybody has to be like you. No. Barnabas was accommodative of people that Paul could not stand. And I think that's one of the things, if you're going to be a mentor, you need to know the kind of people who can help you, who can accommodate you with all your failures, and help you until you stop failing and become a great person. I think that will be quite important. You know, this whole story about the missionary journey begins in Acts chapter 13 at the beginning, where we see them being commissioned. Barnabas and Paul and Mark are being commissioned. We normally call this the first missionary journey. What is the commission about? It's so that they will go to various Gentile cities and then come back and give a report. We must admit that John Mark is an example of somebody who never did finished. If you are commissioned to a task, it's not a good thing not to finish it and come and report back to where he started. You know, the guy at Pamphylia just disappeared to Jerusalem, back to his mother. Why couldn't he have come to Antioch, report back and say, sorry, I can't go for the second missionary journey? My friend, we learned from John Mark what not to do. Don't begin a journey and not finish it. After all, these are older people. If they can survive, you can also survive. If they are with you, they will encourage you. So why give up? So as a leader, please learn to finish whatever you begin. Don't become John Mark. You must be ready if you begin a project of all the challenges will be there. That's why you need to be proactive. Don't just think of the end. Don't just think of the things that can go right. Just ask yourself, what can go wrong? And as you think about what can go wrong, it's not so that you stop going on the journey, but so that you are ready for it. You are able to pray about it. You see God's mind in it. And when it happens, it doesn't have to happen. But in case it happens, it will not shock you. Paul and his companions put out to sea from Paphos and came to Perga in Pamphylia, but John left them and returned to Jerusalem. As to why John left the group and returned to Jerusalem, let me again repeat, we don't know. We don't know. That's what we are learning in Acts chapter 15, verse 37 to 39. Perhaps you can guess. Maybe he grew timid at the thought of crossing over to Taurus mountains. We are going there? Those mountains? That's going to be dangerous. Maybe he was cowardly. Again, how could you be cowardly? If you die with these other guys. Should that be stopping you in your mission journey, fearing of death? Or maybe he was nervous about safety from the bandits. You know, 2 Corinthians chapter 11, Paul is talking about the kind of sufferings he went through. So the first one, maybe you are fearing the tiredness of going over mountains. Maybe you are fearing being killed by bandits. All those were possibilities. And Paul says he went through it. Or maybe, just maybe, he was disgruntled at Paul's big commitment to Gentiles. Or maybe he was not happy that Paul seemed to be taking over from the leadership of his cousin Barnabas. Whatever the reason, none of them was good enough to stop the journey. So what excuses are you giving not to continue to do what God has called you to do? Don't be a John Mark. Should you serve a target group you do not love? Assuming that is true, that the reason he went back to Jerusalem is because he was wondering, how can I continue with these Gentiles? Let them go to hell. The fact that John Mark appears to have gone directly to Jerusalem without reporting the progress of the team to the Antioch church may actually be a clue that he was not comfortable preaching to them. Simply put, it appears that he was uncomfortable with Gentile mission and preaching the gospel to non-Jews. Yet we learned from the beginning, he was sent out by the Spirit to the field. Did he start doubting that they prayed for him at Antioch and that the Spirit of the Lord was on them? You know, John Mark is a resident of Jerusalem. He seemed to be struggling preaching among the Gentiles, like his friend Peter did in Acts chapter 10. Because unlike Paul, he was not committed to the whole world. But remember the gospel. This gospel of the kingdom will be preached to all nations. Then the end will come. It's not for your cousins, it's for everyone. It's not for the rich, it's not for the poor, it's for everyone. So when God calls you to a group, you don't have the freedom to choose not to go to that group just because you don't like them. So here is a team member that did not give the report. The report is being given in Acts chapter 14, verse 26. From there, they sailed back to Antioch, where they had been commended to the grace of God for the work they had now completed. Verse 27. When they arrived and gathered the church together, they reported all the things God had done with them, and that he had opened a door of faith for the Gentiles. That's what we call accountability. Being able to be held accountable means you don't just run away. You come and give your report. You know, the story ends very well. This same guy called John Mark, who is able to go on a missionary journey with Barnabas, becomes so good. The same Paul that originally was doubting him is happy with him. Just look at 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 11, which suggests that he may have gotten over his problem with the Gentiles, one, if that was there, and that Paul got over his problem with the young boy. He is now saying, and you can find it in 2 Timothy, also in Colossians chapter 4, also in Philippians, verse 24, he now is holding and talking about John Mark. After all, Paul tells Timothy to bring John Mark, for he finds him useful in the ministry. Can you imagine? You know, people don't know how to to mentor finally benefit for those who can mentor. Paul benefited from the ministry of Barnabas in mentoring the young man. The young man turns out to be useful to the same Paul that rejected him. Thank you very much.